seriously, you guys, these are the best books. These are my most favorite books from 2023, and I cannot wait to share them with you. I cannot wait to gush over these books and just tell you to just please read them. Read them all. They're fantastic. So hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the video I think about the most as I'm reading throughout the year. I don't know if you do this, but when I'm reading, I'm thinking to myself, like, could this be a 2023 favorite? Maybe I will be including this book on my favorites video for the year. And so yes, I just love making these. And most years I have ranked them and been like, this is my absolute favorite. I couldn't do that this year. And I don't know exactly why. There just isn't a standout one. Some of these books I didn't even give 5 stars, and I didn't even include all my 5 stars. What it came down to for me to include a book in this video is I have to still be thinking about it, and or I want to reread it. So a lot of these books I want to reread. Actually, one I did reread. I read it twice this year. So it's quite the list, and I cannot wait to share it with you. And I really have actually no particular order. I'm just gonna pull off the stack. So the first one is the one I just was talking about. I actually read this twice. Loved it more the second time. So this is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. So this is the first book, and I think it's called the Rook and the Rose trilogy. I'm currently reading the second, and I'm enjoying it just as much. So what happened with this book is I read it initially in January, and I was just distracted. I had other things going on. I just wasn't ready to immerse myself in this book. And this book, this type of book, takes like immersion. I feel like you'll get the most out of it if you just let yourself be in the world, because that is one of its stronger points, is the world. I feel like that is the part that really sucked me in and made me really curious, because it was all set in one area. So it was set in this city of Nadezra, but there's all these different people groups, and they have all these different histories and kind of rivalries, and they don't get along and all of this. And so as you're kind of getting to know the characters and you're getting thrown into this world, you have to learn all that. And what I struggled with the first time is I wasn't using the glossary, or there's a list of the people and how they all fit into which houses and what houses are important in the political scheme, things like that. So you had to pay attention. And I usually really like books you have to pay attention to. I actually prefer that. Almost like the more complex and confusing is more intriguing to me, as long as there's a payoff, as long as the author delivers on what I feel like they're trying to build. And I believe this book did it. And I realize I haven't even told you anything about it. It's about this girl named Ren, who is a con artist, who is coming back to the city she grew up in. And she's coming back wanting to really just scam people, kind of get some money and get out sort of idea. So in order to do that, she has to kind of run this long con to impersonate a noble woman in this culture, yet she grew up within the other people group, right? The not noble people group, basically. And so she has kind of ties to all aspects of this world, but she's just trying to get her own, right? And then she just kind of gets caught up in things and things start happening. And really what intrigues me a lot about this book is the different personas and the different masks, if you will, everybody wears, and following all that and feeling like that tension of like, are they going to get caught? Or even the tension of like, who's behind that mask? You kind of want to figure all those things out. And I found that really intriguing and really fun. So this book is on my favorites list. Another one, you guys, this book is just fantastic. It's really fun. It's The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. So people know about this book. It's quite popular, and it's popular for a reason, because its premise is just really intriguing. It's about these people in this retirement village. It's not like a retirement home, it's more of a village. Like everybody has their own apartment, and they have all these like social gatherings, and they have like knitting club and puzzle club and things like that. And then this group of people decided they wanted to like form a murder club, like a solve a murder club. And it's really fun. And so it starts with like cold cases or things like that until there's actually a murder at the retirement complex, and they decide maybe we'll actually try and solve this. And so it was just fun. It is straight up murder mystery. Like, we're not talking any thriller elements. It is very much a murder mystery, but without like a main detective. There are detectives involved, but really your detective is this group of older people that are trying to solve the crime. I loved it. It was wholesome. It was fun. I am excited to read the second one and third one and fourth one. There's a number of them in the series, and so That one was such a favorite. This actually was one that I could have potentially put as my favorite of the year, and that's The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. This was such a good book. It had a bit of that retelling vibes to it, but it involved Norse mythology as opposed to like Greek mythology, and I just really haven't got into any of the Greek mythologies. I don't typically like them. What made me like this book is it's about Loki and Agraboda, who was his wife. Now, before I started reading this book, I did look up like the mythology. Like, I was just curious. I was like, I've never heard of Agraboda. I didn't know Loki had a wife. So I looked it all up. It was very interesting as to like, I'm like, whoa, they have some crazy creature children sort of idea. But then you get into the story. You get into it and it just draws you right in because of the characters. Honestly, hands down, if you are a character-driven reader, this is such a good book. It pulls you into Agraboda's story and like her hardships, and she is a witch who has been like banished, or she like fled from the gods and was like hiding out in this forest sort of idea. So you feel some of her backstory, you feel some of her feeling betrayed and wanting to be alone. And then on the scene comes Loki, right? Which I've watched a number of the Marvel videos, not all of them, but like I feel like most people know kind of the trickster god, right? But I feel like this book did such a good job of bringing out his character. Yes, the trickster aspect of the character, but some of the other parts of his personality that could have been there, right? I mean, this is a myth, so it's all pretend. But the author did such a good job of making me feel like, oh, this is the true Loki. And I just really liked it. I really liked the banter between them. I liked their relationship. I found just the progression of the story to be really good. So I loved it. It was such a good book. So I highly recommend this one if you haven't read it. Okay, on to the next one. All right, we are hopping around. Now we're gonna go into a little science fiction. So I read a couple sci-fi books this year and it's intrigued me to potentially read more next year. But I read Justin Cronin's The Ferryman. Okay, I really thought this book was interesting. This actually is the book I think I gave 4 stars for a couple reasons, but I still can't stop thinking about it, so maybe I should raise it up to like a 4.55 star. But irregardless, it is about this kind of utopian society where there's really no struggles. These people live on an island. They're kind of separated from what they hear to be like the mainland, which is kind of war-torn, terrible place. And this utopian island was created, and there's creators, and the people who live there, they don't really care so much as they live out their lives in a way that just, there's no hardships, there's no pain, there's no anything. They don't even have kids. They like get awarded kids. And it's interesting in the sense of like there's this ferryman and there's this ferry for when somebody gets like retired, I think they called it, or like when they die, they get put on the ferry and taken back to the nursery to be like recycled sort of idea. It goes from there. So it kind of takes the messiness out of life. And so at the beginning of the story, you're meeting the main character, Proctor Bennett, and he is the ferryman. So he takes people to the nursery. There's this whole procedure of kind of end of life sort of idea. And so you follow him, you get to know him. It's a little bit of slice of life at first, which I feel like went on a little bit long, but at the same time, once you get to the second part and when things start happening, it gets a little weird, and then it reveals kind of what's going on and you're like, oh, I liked that. I don't read enough sci-fi, so maybe if you are a sci-fi reader, you would have seen that all coming, but I didn't. I was so surprised by the twist, and I really liked it. I liked it. So I recommend this, and enough that I want to check out his previous, I think it's a series called the Passage series. So I want to check out more of his work because I really enjoyed this. And so that was kind of a standout fun book. I'm just going to include both of these. I would call this the most surprising book that I read this year. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I expected to enjoy it because that is why I pick up YA fantasy. I pick up YA fantasy for fun, for just an escapist sort of time, but I picked up these and I loved them. I felt like they had more depth than some of the YA fantasy I pick up, but they also had wonderful angsty, like will they, won't they sort of moments that I actually got behind. I liked both of the characters, or all of the characters, right? There's a bit of a love triangle. But the first book is called Legendborn by Tracy Dion, and the second book is called Bloodmarked. So I'm going to talk about both of them because I feel like I pretty much inhaled these books over the course of like a week. I read both of them. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were wonderful. And so it's about this girl named it's not Alice. Alice is her friend, Bree, who is entering this program in the college for like 16 to 18-year-olds so they can take college classes as a high schooler. I forget what it's called. Anyway, so she's drawn to this campus and she starts classes, and then like the first night she witnesses something she shouldn't. And then she just keeps being drawn back into this world. But the world is that of the Legendborn, which has to do with these people who have kind of magical giftings that they use to fight back the demons and keep the demons out of the human realm, and really have protected everybody since the time of like King Arthur. So the idea is this is kind of King Arthur and the Round Table as it has gone through the histories, and this is the current Round Table. It's a little more complicated, but I mean, it is still YA fantasy, so it's pretty easy to understand. And what I loved is I loved the way that Bree like fell into her magic and her giftings, and how they were a little bit more complex than expected. But you also had a lot of heritage of her heritage, and you had like a lot of like black girl magic, like where she was just like so strong in her ancestors really, and this magic that was passed through generations. It was really good. And then I just flew through the second one. I liked the relationships. So there is, like I said, a little bit of a love triangle, which, man, they're so classic. And if I'm in the mood for it, I eat it up. Even though I'm not the correct demographics for these books, I feel like I really enjoy it if it's done well, and I thought it was done well. Enough so that I'm really looking forward to the third one, which I don't think is coming out for a while. I actually don't know when it's supposed to come out, but I'm really excited for it. So those ones were so good. I recommend reading them, especially if you, one, enjoy YA fantasy, or even if you don't, maybe you're kind of in a mood for a quick moving, highly entertaining, angsty sort of book. Pick up Legendborn. So the only historical fiction that I have on this list, because again, see yesterday's video, I believe, where I talk more about the fact that I'm just not in a historical fiction season anymore, but I did read this book and I really liked it. So this is Monica Hesse's They Went Left. So this is a YA historical fiction book, which is maybe partly why I enjoyed it so much. It wasn't as heavy, but it tackled World War II from a different lens, which if you read historical fiction, it is easy to get burnt out on. But here, the main plot line is like what happens post World War II. So when everybody gets let out of the concentration camp. So there's this girl who was released from the concentration camp, and now she's looking for her family, because at the time of her entering the concentration camp, she split up from her parents, and then she was also split up from her brother. And she is looking for her brother, and she spends this book looking for him, and how that plays out. It's just hard to listen to, because you feel how lost she is, you feel how broken she is, you feel how much she's trying to rebuild all parts of herself, her physical, mental, emotional self. You feel all that, and she doesn't always make the best decisions because of all of that, right? But she's looking for her brother, and she wants some sense of her life back, is really the best way to put it. And it was really good. All right, so the next book. So I read the first book in the David Bad series. So this is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. It's so good, you guys, right? I feel like this has been popular for a long time, and it's popular for a reason. The main character of Nari, she's another con artist. I feel like that happens a lot in fantasy books. She's a con artist, and one day she accidentally summons a djinn warrior, and she really shouldn't be able to summon him in any way, shape, or form. And what he realizes is that maybe she isn't normal, and he needs to take her to the city of Brass, the city where the magic is, basically. And so they kind of go on this journey there. Okay, I loved the setting. I loved it, kind of like Cairo, and just that arid desert like climate. I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed flying carpets and things like that. But then as the story progressed, right, you learn more about Nari, you learn more about Dara and some of his backstory, some of his like challenging backstory, or she learns that, and I loved that part. And then there is kind of the ruling family in the city, and she and Dara have interactions with them. Dara is kind of like their arch enemy, so there's this kind of animosity there. But for her, that's not the case, and so it's more of her trying to find her place. And it ended on such a like intense story note that I can't wait to pick up the second one. The next book I just finished. So glad I picked it up. So The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This book gave me what I've been wanting in dark academia since I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I love The Secret History. I know that book is very polarizing, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed just the pretentiousness of all the characters, all these like rich characters, feeling they're entitled to things, and just some of that happens from there, right? You have that in this book. Not as much, maybe, and differently, but you definitely have it. And so this book is set around this society, the Alexandrian Society, which is this secret, elite, magical society that controls all the magical knowledge throughout the years, right? The Library of Alexandria sort of idea. And every 10 years, there's 6 new candidates that are chosen to go through this initiation program and have all the access to this library and be able to work on kind of their specialized magical craft, right? They all have kind of a unique thing, like telepathy or the ability to manipulate the physical world, all these things, right? So they have all these different giftings and talents, and they are able to grow those and learn about them over this year. But what they're told at the beginning is only 5 of the 6 will be like fully initiated into the society. One person won't make it. And so they have this like competition going. And that's really fun. I feel like that's partly what gave me a bit of the Secret History vibes, is that like they're friends, but they're kind of like teaming up against each other, and maybe there's allies and there's some complications, right? And so I really enjoyed this, and I'm actually listening to the second one currently. And so I have started a number of wonderful series this year, which has gotten me into next year. I'm really going to focus more on my series reading. But the last 2 books are not series. So this one is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I really enjoyed this book, you guys. It is about these sisters who are kind of estranged from each other based on some things that happened in their childhood. I believe they lost their mom, if I remember right, and their dad was not the best. And so some things happened there, and they kind of split up. But the thing about them is they are all witches, but not in an era or a location that's supportive of that. And so then none of them have really tried to harness their craft in any way. But then at the beginning of the book, they're kind of all drawn back to each other, and they're drawn back to each other for kind of this big bad thing that's going on, and they have to find a way to reconcile. And a lot of the book is them reconciling with each other, which I loved. I loved that part. I loved seeing them kind of mend those bridges. I also loved, as they were doing that, they were bringing people along with them. So they're almost creating this like sisterhood, really. And that was really beautiful. And so I really enjoyed this. It had very historical elements as well as witchy elements. So I loved this. And then the last one I want to talk about is a thriller book, which thrillers don't usually make my favorites of the year. I enjoy them for the time, right? They have a purpose, and I love a good thriller. But this one I connected with. So this is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I've read other Ruth Ware, and I think they're great, but this one I liked a lot because of the connection. I feel like I connected to the main character. So this story is basically about this girl kind of later in life, post-college. She's like pregnant, she's married, she's trying to start her life, but she is remembering the tragedy that happened to her during her college years when her best friend was murdered. But the key here is that she was kind of the primary witness of this murder, and she testified against a man who was then sent to prison. But at the beginning of this book, there's kind of doubts that are starting to be laid as to, is he actually the murderer? And she was so confident prior, and now it's kind of cracking that facade for her. And it's so interesting to watch that happen. I think for me, what I enjoyed, I did enjoy that college time frame because it definitely had the in the past, in the future sort of setup, which I think worked really well for this style of a book. So I enjoyed the friendship groups. I enjoyed her moving to, I think it was like Oxford or Yale or some elite college of some sort, and kind of getting used to the campus and finding her friends and all these things that happened, right? But I also really vibed with her present day person. She's pregnant. She's just trying to move on with her life. There's enough hard things to not need to like drudge up the past. And so I just really connected more than I usually do for thrillers. And so I highly recommend it, especially if you are a little bit more character driven, or maybe it's just because I'm a mom, I connected to her character. I'm not sure, but I really loved it. So you guys, best books of 2023. Really, these were some favorites of mine. I read some other good books too, and see tomorrow's video for the books I did not like. So I have some DNFs plus some really disappointing books to share with you. So anyway, thank you for stopping by. I hope you liked some of these books. Let me know if any of these are your favorites, or if you have any other recommendations based on the books you have seen me highlight today. I would love your recommendations. But otherwise, I hope you're doing well, and give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next book video. All right,